talk, music. Get it all
24 hours
on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 p.m. in Cotonou. Good evening and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM worldwide at wadr.org. First, the headline stories. Central Sahel remains the world's most terrorist-affected region, 2026 Global Terrorism Index reveals. Niger's deposed President Bassoum's term officially ends today as he remains in detention following a 2023 coup. Civil society in Guinea-Bissau condemns the alleged murder of activist Balanta.
We learned of this with great dismay. From our perspective, it was a brutal execution.
And public outrage in Liberia as President Boakai nominates a new electoral chief widow.
We do not trust or the opponent or general care widow because we believe that that man's already been compromised.
Our concern is around his independence, his neutrality.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Sankulu Jubril Janko.
Thanks for joining us. We begin with the 2026 Global Terrorism Index, which indicates that the Central Sahel remains the region most affected by terrorism worldwide, although there are some signs of improvement. According to the report, this region now accounts for over half of all terrorism-related deaths globally, a significant increase from less than 1% in 2007. However, there are cautious signs of progress. In 2025, 10 countries in the region saw decline in terrorism-related deaths, while 4 experienced increases, suggesting a fragile but noteworthy improvement. Usman Omar tells us more.
The 2026 Global Terrorism Index reveals that in the Central Sahel, Burkina Faso saw the largest global drop in deaths, down to 45%, while Mali recorded a 42% decrease for the third consecutive year. Niger also reported fewer attacks and casualties, although it remains among the hardest hit countries. Despite these gains, the report warns against optimism. 6 of the world's 10 most affected countries are still in sub-Saharan Africa, including 3 in the Central Sahel. Armed groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State remain active, with some areas, particularly in Niger, seeing a rise in attacks. The index also highlights underlying drivers of extremism, adding that 71% of recruits reportedly join armed groups after experiencing abuse, while poverty and lack of opportunity remain key factors. These developments come as Sahel countries strengthen regional security cooperation. In late 2025, the Confederation of Sahel States launched a unified military force aimed at improving coordination, intelligence sharing, and joint operations. While such initiatives have led to the neutralization of several militant leaders, the report concludes that the Sahel is likely to remain the global epicenter of terrorism into 2026.
Usman Omar with those details. Meanwhile, in Niger, deposed President Mohamed Bazoum's term officially ends today, April 2, 2026. Bazoum has remained in detention in Niamey since he was overthrown in a military coup on July 26, 2023. Despite repeated calls from human rights organizations and civil society groups for his release, those efforts have yet to yield results. Augustine Colley explains the details.
Mohamed Bazoum's political career had already been shaken by an attempted coup on March 31, 2021, 2 days before his inauguration. 2 years later, he was finally ousted by the military, which seized power in Niamey. Several diplomatic attempts have been made without success to secure his release. Efforts have been made by countries such as Togo and Morocco, while an international collective published an open letter in December 2025 calling for urgent action from international actors to obtain his release. In March 2026, the European Parliament adopted a resolution calling for the release of Mohamed Bazoum before the official end of his term. However, this initiative was strongly criticized by several member states of a regional organization who saw it as interference in Niger's internal affairs. None of the public efforts to secure his release has so far succeeded. Mohamed Bazoum's immunity was lifted 2 years ago, but no formal legal proceedings have been initiated. As for the ruling military committee, it remains silent on the former president's personal situation in its public communications.
Augustine Cooley filed that report. We now turn to Nigeria, where students of the University of Jos in Plateau State have been evacuated following the closure of the institution amid rising security concerns in the state capital. Students left their hostels carrying their luggage, with some seen at the old airport roundabout in Jos as they made their way to their final destinations. The evacuation comes after university authorities on Wednesday directed students to evacuate their hostels as tensions escalated in parts of Jos, raising fears over their safety. The directive was contained in a statement signed by the Vice Chancellor, Tanko Isha, who termed the immediate evacuation of students as a precautionary measure. Meanwhile, Nigeria's political space is witnessing fresh tensions. The African Democratic Congress, ADC, rejects a decision by the Independent Electoral Commission, INEC, to delist its leadership amid an ongoing internal dispute. This development is raising concerns over political interference and the future of opposition parties ahead of the 2027 general elections. WDR's Yechenu Sasetu reports.
The African Democratic Congress, led by David Mark, has rejected INEC's decision to stop recognizing its leadership, describing the move as flawed. INEC had earlier announced it would no longer recognize either faction of the party and would suspend engagement with both groups pending the outcome of a court case. Reacting, the party's National Publicity Secretary, Bolaji Abdullahi, accused the electoral body of bowing to pressure from the government, alleging that the decision was influenced by political considerations. The party also described INEC's position as contradictory, insisting it does not reflect the true interpretation of the Court of Appeal ruling on the leadership dispute. ADC says it is reviewing its options and will announce its next steps, urging members to remain calm as the situation unfolds. The development is the latest twist in the party's internal crisis, which has led to multiple claims over its leadership structure. For WADR, Yechenu Sasetu in Abuja.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
On the diplomatic front, Ghana and Zimbabwe are focused on expanding trade, boosting industrialization, and advancing African-led development. This renewed direction emerged during a state banquet hosted by President John Dramani Mahama for Zimbabwean leader Emmerson Mnangagwa, who is on a 3-day state visit to Ghana. Both leaders highlighted the need to convert long-standing historical relations into practical economic cooperation, particularly in areas that can drive growth and job creation. From Accra, Nedi Dititi has the rest of the story.
At the state banquet in Accra, Presidents Mahama and Mnangagwa outlined a shared interest in deepening economic engagement between Ghana and Zimbabwe. President Mahama noted that relations between the two countries date back to liberation struggles and said the focus should now be on building partnerships that deliver measurable development outcomes.
Tonight is not merely ceremonial, it is a celebration of a relationship shaped by history and that is enriched by shared experiences and sustained by genuine human connections.
President Mnangagwa, on his part, emphasized the importance of increasing trade and strengthening private sector collaboration between the two countries. He pointed to the African Continental Free Trade Area as a key framework for enhancing intra-African trade and improving market access. The Zimbabwean leader also stressed the need for industrialization and value addition, particularly in sectors such as agriculture and mining. He further called for African countries to define their own development priorities and align partnerships accordingly.
We, the citizens of our countries, Zimbabwe, Ghana, and Africa, have a duty and responsibility to develop, to modernize, and industrialize our countries and the African continent, ourselves, partners and investors, well-wishers and others can only assist and complement our own efforts, based, however, on our own defined priorities, our own goals and our own vision. To never import foreign goals, import foreign vision into our countries.
Both leaders also identified opportunities for cooperation in areas including agriculture, education, tourism, and mining, with an emphasis on practical partnerships between businesses. President Mnangagwa also acknowledged Ghana's role in Zimbabwe's liberation struggle, describing it as a foundation for continued cooperation.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for inviting me to visit your great country. Engagements at this highest level are critically important to give impetus to the shared goals and targets we have set for ourselves for the maximum benefits for our peoples.
For WDR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
In Guinea-Bissau, there is a growing controversy and public outcry following the death of a civil society activist, Vigario Luis Balanta. Balanta's lifeless body was found on the outskirts of the capital, Bissau, days after he went missing. The late activist was known as a vocal critic of the transitional authorities. As Christopher Atichu reports, his family and friends are calling for an investigation to determine responsibility.
Vigario Luis Balata, a 35-year-old activist in Guinea-Bissau, was known to be outspoken and critical of the military transition since the coup last November. Following his abduction, the lifeless body of the leader of the citizens' movement was found on Tuesday. The Guinea-Bissau League for Human Rights denounces what it calls a summary execution and calls for an investigation. Boubacar Touré is the organization's president.
We learned of this with great dismay. From our perspective, it was a brutal execution. He was abducted and executed brutally by the armed men. To this day, no one knows who this criminal group was or who ordered it. As a civil society organization, we are calling on the government to urgently open an investigation to identify and bring to justice those responsible for this criminal act.
The Guinea-Bissau League for Human Rights says it has appealed to the United Nations to put pressure on the military authorities in Bissau.
We have activated the various United Nations mechanisms, the Special Rapporteurs on Brutal Executions and also the Special Rapporteurs on Human Rights Defenders. Data was presented for those reports to help us put pressure on the government to shed light on this very serious case.
Furthermore, civil society organizations in Guinea-Bissau are denouncing a restriction of freedoms since the coup of November 26, 2025. As of now, there has been no official reaction from the government.
A report by Christopher Atichu. In Liberia, concerns have been raised over the integrity of future elections following the appointment of Jonathan Widow as acting chair of the Electoral Commission. President Joseph Boakai made the appointment after the resignation of the former head of the National Elections Commission. With the 2029 elections approaching, critics warn that any perception of bias could undermine public confidence, peace and stability, while observers stressed the need to maintain trust in the electoral process. WDR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
The appointment has trickled widespread criticism from governance advocates, CSOs, and the student movements. The civil society group Solidarity and Trust for a New Destined has called for the immediate withdrawal of Widow's appointment, warning that it poses a serious threat to the credibility and legitimacy of future elections. Adding to the pressure, Anosi Miami of the Center for Transparency and Accountability acknowledged the Widow's professional competence but questioned his independence. For Robert Zlanta, a young Liberian advocate, the president should reconsider the appointment, emphasizing that Liberia has other qualified individuals with neutral public posturing.
Peace cannot be damaged for someone's political personal endorsement. We do not trust or the appointment of General K. Widow withdraw because we believe that that means all have been compromised. There are so many Liberians in this country that are qualified to be election commission board. You cannot take your kinsmen. This country does not belong to people of North Africa.
Similarly, the Student Unification Party SUP rejected the nomination and called on the Liberian Senate to block the appointment. The growing chorus of opposition highlights a critical test for Liberia's democratic institutions as stakeholders insist that safeguarding the independence and the credibility of the National Elections Commission is essential for national peace. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, Dakar and worldwide at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Central Sahel remains the world's most terrorist-affected region. 2026 Global Terrorism Index reveals. Niger's deposed President Bassoum's term officially ends today as he remains in detention following a 2023 coup. Civil society in Guinea-Bissau condemns the alleged murder of activist Balanta. Public outrage in Liberia as President Boakai nominates a new electoral chief widow. Still ahead, we have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Weeks after the controversial and highly contested dissolution of the 40 political parties in Guinea, Article 19 is calling on authorities in Conakry to reverse the decision. The organization that promotes the freedom of expression and access to information described the move as a violation of international standards and political participation and freedom of association. According to Article 19, dissolving political parties by administrative order without judicial process undermines constitutional rights and restricts the political space, especially ahead of upcoming legislative elections. The decision taken by the Ministry of Territorial Administration and Decentralization affects major opposition parties, including the UFDG, PRP, and UFR. Their activities have been banned, their offices sealed, and their assets placed under state control. Alfred Bolakali, Regional Director of Article 19, spoke to WADR.
The shock comes from the fact that by renewing with the electoral process in September of the referendum and the presidential election in March, the expectation was that Guinea restarts with an open political environment enabling citizens to enjoy diverse political expression and to express themselves about their political needs and rights through a plurality of political associations and movements. So you can take at one side steps for renewing with the election cycle, including referendum, presidential election, and upcoming legislative election in May. And at the other point, you continue to close the doors for the political plurality. Closing political party is not just closing these associations, it's also depriving citizens from the opportunity to enjoy political plurality, to express themselves in different ways within an open environment, and call on really Guinean authority to reconsider these measures and to enable citizens to associate freely without undue political and administrative interference.
Alfred Bolakali is the Regional Director of Article 19. In Mali, the transitional authorities have announced an increase in regulated fuel prices. At the pump, petrol has risen from 775 to 875 CFA francs per litre, while diesel has gone up from 725 to 940 CFA francs per litre. This increase, driven by rising global oil costs, is affecting several sectors of the country's economy. It comes at a time when Mali has been facing fuel supply difficulties for several months. Abdullah Hassan completes the story.
Gasoline has risen from 775 to 875 CFA francs per litre, and diesel from 725 to 940 CFA francs per litre. In the transportation sector, the situation is severely disrupting the daily lives of drivers who are forced to adapt.
La pénurie de carburant nous affecte.
The fuel shortage has hit us hard. The problem is not just rising prices. Diesel is almost impossible to find at fuel stations. We are forced to buy it on the black market, where prices keep changing. We understand that inflation is a global issue, but the authorities need to consider transport operators and take measures to ease their burden.
Beyond transportation, consumer goods are also experiencing soaring prices. In this market in the capital, the impact is already being felt, according to this woman speaking on condition of anonymity.
Most of our products are imported, so any fuel shortage or price increase makes things difficult. Prices have gone up across the board. Even pepper. It used to cost 250 CFA francs, but now it's 500.
While the country is experiencing economic difficulties, Malian economist Modibo Mao Makalau believes this situation could further reduce the purchasing power of the population.
If you consider that transport services, peri-urban transport and industries rely heavily on diesel, that means any increase will impact national production and also affect the purchasing power of citizens.
To address the shortage, the government has announced a subsidy of 3 billion CFA francs per month for petroleum products.
A report by Ali Chamin Bamako, presented by Abdullahi Hassan.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The guest interview focuses on Liberia, where the appointment of a new elections commission chairperson is generating widespread reactions from cross-sections of the population. President Joseph Boakai nominated Jonathan Widow to head the electoral body after the resignation of the former chairperson of the National Elections Commission. With the 2029 elections approaching, critics warn of Mr. Widow's political alignment with the ruling party. Our guest is Anderson Miamen, Executive Director of the Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia Central. He speaks about the need to maintain trust in the electoral process.
Mr. Widow had served the Elections Commission for several years, and also he has played roles internationally when it comes to election governance and management. So he has the technical capabilities to serve in that position. But our concern is around his independence, his neutrality, especially so that there have been concerns in the wake of a video that has been circulating on social media from the 2023 general presidential elections in Liberia, linking him to the Unity Party and the current government. So in that video, he is seen sandwiched by other actors and one of the former chairpersons of the Elections Commission, Mr. Fumoyan, announcing results in favor of the Unity Party. So that in a way undermines his independence and neutrality. So that's why we raised concerns regarding his suitability for the role.
How could this appointment affect the independence of the Electoral Commission?
It is going to affect the independence of the Elections Commission on paper and perhaps in practice, because he's going there with a connection to the current administration. So that suspicion will be there in terms of his conduct, in terms of what happens. Maybe this is going to help in a way to make him to be very careful in terms of what he does. But that suspicion will always be there because he has an alignment with the current administration. So certain decisions he takes, even if they are based on evidence, they are based on sound reasoning, but once they appear to favor the current administration, the indications will be that he's making those decisions because of his alignment with the current administration.
The nominated elections chairperson has already taken over as acting chair, pending confirmation by the Liberian Senate. With these concerns coming out, do you believe the Liberian Senate will confirm the nominated electoral chairperson?
The Senate has a responsibility statutorily to confirm those that are appointed by the president, especially so the chairperson and other commissioners of the National Elections Commission. So we hope that they will do their due diligence, they will ask all of the hard questions, and then make a determination that will be in the best interest of the public. We have a position that others that are equally qualified and independent who have gone to the Elections Commission instead of Mr. Wadr. But it will be up to the Senate to do its due diligence, to do what it takes to ensure that they ask all of the hard questions of the chairperson of the commission, such that any decision to make will be informed by evidence and will be in the best interest of the public.
A very interesting one. It's about the process of appointing an electoral commission chairperson for Liberia's election commission. Do you believe the current process ensures neutrality and independence?
There are different suggestions that could be made. Even if the suggestion would be that the commissioners decide among themselves who will be the chairperson, then we'll go to the process around how those commissioners are appointed. So if that process is flawed, if that process is not inclusive enough, if that process is not objective enough, then you're still going to come back to where we are now regarding the appointment of somebody who has political alignment. So part of the suggestion or recommendation would be, for example, to have an inclusive process that is provided by law. At the moment, the law says the president can appoint, and those people can go to the Senate for confirmation.
Anderson Miaman is Executive Director of the Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia Central. Well, in sports, we begin with football because the Nigeria Football Federation (NFF) has officially inaugurated its Electoral Committee and Electoral Appeals Committee as part of preparations for its forthcoming elections. The ceremony took place today at the Federation Secretariat in Abuja, with NFF President Ibrahim Musa Gusso presiding over the event. The committee were approved during an extraordinary General Assembly held in Yogonago on March 23, 2026. In total, 12 individuals have been selected to serve across both committees. And in basketball, the Youth Academy of Senegal's Nyaning Basket Club (NBC) has once again proven itself to be a breeding ground for talent. After 3 years of steady progress on the Petit Court, young Morfal is leaving the nest to head to Spain, where he will now play for the prestigious Gran Canaria club. This marks a major turning point in Moore's career. We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudo Ju for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. To our valued listeners, our website wadr.org is currently under maintenance. It's only going under maintenance, and in the meantime, you can access our programs and news editions on SoundCloud and AudioMac. I am Sankula Jibril Janko. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and